G'day guys, Tillis20 here and welcome back to Springwood. Today we're going to be working on the area that surrounds the port that we built in the last episode. This area is somewhat pretty far away from the actual downtown Springwood, which you're looking at right now. So in terms of what I'll be building and what I'll be working on, you can kind of expect a lot of industrial areas, suburbs. I would imagine, well, I plan to build a lot of low income houses and, working on some areas that's probably less desirable. But that's not to say that's all the areas that we're going to be working on are like that. Some areas will be quite nice. And for instance, this area that we're going to be working on today is, not too shabby. It's actually quite nice. The first little part that I'm going to be working on is working on a sea break, basically giving the ships that are entering the port a bit of relief from the ocean over there on the left hand side. But before I get into too much of that, I do just want to draw your attention to something that's popping up on your screen right now. It's a little reminder that I made a couple of days ago to remind you about subscribing to the channel if you haven't done so already, and liking this video if you do like this video, and a couple of other platforms where you can catch me on. If follow me on YouTube isn't enough, then you can follow me on Instagram and Twitter, because I'm pretty active on there, and you can find out bits of other information that I might miss in episodes of Springwood. But yeah, now that that's all taken care of, what I'm doing in this episode, I'm gonna plop down a bridge that I've had in my asset collection for probably like 6 weeks. Not 6 weeks, 6 months. It's been out for ages, and it's a perfect addition to Springwood. It's I can identify this bridge with a bridge that's in Ports, Los Angeles, that I'm pulling a lot of inspiration from in this particular area. So that's coming up around the 10-minute mark, so you can stay tuned for that. And I'm also been working on quite a lot of marinas and areas around the ocean. And this particular one is really just a jetty, I guess. And you'll see me plop down a bit of parking just for access for that jetty. I really like this area, and there's a reason why I really like this area, and it's I kind of put my finger on it. It's something that I really like just about cities, or when I visit places. It's just something that I've always found really interesting. I really love it when one area transitions to another, and that sounds kind of strange, but for example, when you cross borders from one country to another, and if they're following really quite different cultures, for instance, crossing the border from India to Nepal, really different countries, and it's like the transition crossing the border is really interesting. And whether it's the fact that the traditions change, or whether the clothing changes, or the buildings change, or the language changes, it's always really interesting to see that difference. And cities follow really similar kind of ideas, I guess. For instance, this area that I'm working on right now is the transition from an industrial park, being the port Springwood, to this nature area that's on the left hand side. This doesn't just, well, I guess it sometimes does. The change doesn't really just happen. There's a bit between where that change happens, and they're the areas that I really enjoy detailing in Springwood. They're the areas that I really enjoy visiting in countries. Particularly when I went to New York a couple of weeks ago, that was really interesting, seeing how one district would turn to another, or how, what's considered Manhattan and then what's then considered the Bronx, and how that's different. Or, these sort of areas, I feel like that transition's never easy, and I think it's always a really bizarre feeling. I used to live in a bit of a transition. I lived in a area in Sydney where it went basically from city to suburbs, and I was like in this mix of an area where there's like old industrial buildings and some houses, but then some shops, and it's like this weird area. But like those areas are so cool, they're so strange. And I really love that. Like I really love those strange areas. So I work on a couple of strange areas in this episode, and like let me know in the comments if you share my enthusiasm for strange areas. Like I'd be lucky to get one. It's not really a normal obsession, but like I totally dig it. But enough of what I'm digging. This is what I'm working on right now is an area. It's a boat ramp. It's not an area, it's a boat ramp. I was trying to figure out what that word was. I'm working on a boat ramp, and this is the first boat ramp I've plopped down in Springwood. Definitely not going to be my last, because this particular area hold quite a lot of different marinas, and this is just one of them. This area in particular, I'm pulling inspiration from Port Los Angeles. I almost said Port Springwood. And, there's a couple of areas around here that's, particularly interesting and inspirational. I had someone in the comments a couple of episodes ago said that they actually drove over a bridge that I, showcased in the video. So, if anyone out there who lives in LA, and there's a whole bunch of you live in LA, and there are areas that I talk about, or areas that I should be going to, or areas that I should be referencing, please let me know in the comments, because I'm probably missing a whole bunch. As you can tell, I'm Australian, and I am thinking about LA, and I can imagine that people living in LA are probably pulling their hair out as I reference things that don't really exist, or maybe I'm just nailing it. Who knows? Got like a really great set of trees that I'm using at the moment. You can see me flicking through them right now. They it's like I try and do a bit of a mix of high detail and low detail trees, mostly because the low detail trees kind of like fill out areas, whereas the high detail trees take up, they just obviously take up more space in my game, and but they just look so good. You'll see it in the cinematics at the end that, those high detail trees are just awesome. And now that I've started plopping them down, I really can't go back to the low. So, I have a bit of a mix. This whole area is kind of strange. I mean, it's I feel like this boat ramp was just kind of placed as a bit of a filler, in general. I mean, I just placed it as a bit of a filler, but in terms of city planning, I'd imagine they just plopped this down as a bit of a filler. By the way, I'm using a ton of assets that you can find in my Springwood asset collection. The whole asset collection is in the description below. So, if you're curious about the things that I'm using, go and check that out. So it'll link you straight to my collection, and you can, use the things that I'm using in the collection. But yeah, I plopped down a whole bunch of trailers. Then I realized that I wasn't subscribed to anything that could actually pull those trailers, or the boats that were on the trailers. So, I kind of leave them empty, and you'll see in the cinematics at the end that I do fill them out. So a little bit of a change. I'm now working on a suburb that I'm going to stick up here, and this suburb it's pretty isolated. It's a pretty isolated suburb. I mean, it's technically a bit of an industrial area, so it's in a kind of a weird spot just in general, and it is somewhat perched up on this hill that is around this really nice area, I guess, around that top part. And so I'm kind of like putting a bit of a mix of vanilla. To be honest, it's actually mostly vanilla buildings in this area, but they fit in so nicely. And some of them, like I said before, are really highly detailed, and some of them are just a bit bland. But that's fine, because in terms of looking at this little area here, I probably won't be looking at it that much. It's mostly just for background cinematics And in terms of inspiration for this little area, I'm basing it off this area in LA, close to Port Los Angeles. I actually don't really know the name of the actual suburb, or I guess it's like multiple suburbs around here. But what I really like about this area is it's just like, it seems to be a little bit posh. Like I don't want it to be quite as dingy as the rest of the areas around this port that I'm building, but this actual suburb that I'm building here is kind of got a bit more of a variety of buildings and, a little bit different architecture, which is, kind of fun and a little bit, well, actually a lot easier for me to plop down because, I guess the style's a little bit more varied. And I really like this train line that I've got going over there, creeping onto the right-hand side. At the moment, that's the only train transport entering Springwood, from this side of the river. But later on down the track, when I kind of start expanding this side of the river, the line will probably just primarily be for industrial that's coming into this port and all the other areas around this area. So there actually won't be any passenger train stations on this line. This would just be totally industrial, and you actually see a couple of trains in the cinematics creep past and they just look great. Once this whole area is starting to get more developed and I'll stick down some more industrial areas, it's going to look really cool seeing all these different trains creeping past. So that's something that I'm really excited for. I'm actually really excited to expand this side of the river just in general because, I feel like it's going to really add to the fact that Springwood is pretty much a giant city in terms of city skylines, and it's going to make the Springwood function more like a city, having having just multiple areas where people live and where industrial's kind of coming from. It's not just one area in Springwood that I have an industrial park. There's multiple, and this is the largest industrial park, and this is just another suburb that's one of many of Springwood. So it's really cool that it's expanding the way it is. I've just plopped down this really awesome bridge. This bridge I've had in my collection for months and months and months, and it's so awesome. It's such an awesome looking bridge, and I've been so keen to plop it down for so long, and today's the day that I can actually finally do that. And it fits in really nicely for this area. So, this sort of bridge is, here's some pictures from Port Los Angeles where I'm modeling pretty much this entire area off. In particular where this bridge actually sits. And, this bridge, I can't remember the actual name of it. Pretty much story of this time lapse is just me not remembering the names of things. But yeah, this bridge provides access for boats underneath because that middle part goes up and down as ships come through. And what I'm imagining for this actual area is that it was probably way more industrial than it is at the moment. It's probably become a bit more of a hub for housing and for marinas, and probably on the verge of becoming as the city expands, it's probably becoming more of an area where you're going to be seeing more suburbs sort of pop up. So in terms of this bridge being used as to be able to open up and down for boat traffic, it probably doesn't get used for that anymore. I reckon most of these sailing boats that I'm plopping down pretty shortly could even fit underneath that little gap between the water and the bridge. But probably back in the day, 30 years ago in Springwood, there would have been more larger ships kind of coming through and accessing this area, and that's probably when it was used. So, just a bit of backstory for this area. Really just super nerdy, but, that is something that I constantly think about when I'm developing Springwood is what was this area used for and what it's really used for in the actual use for this city. I really want it to be really practical, even though, there's obviously that backstory does not need to exist. But that's kind of the point of the series is that you can actually think about where things used to sit and, you know, the way it kind of looks now. And I think it also helps by creating realism, well, for creating realism, because, you know, just those little differences, you know, plopping a bridge like that around an area like this, it makes very slight and subtle differences. And if you notice things like that in Springwood, then please let me know in the comments, because it's like I make it for my own sanity and for my own enjoyment, but I'd really like it if other people are noticing these little bits of detail as well. And I actually also really like it when people call me out for things that I've missed out on, because I generally go back and change it. And you know, it's always interesting to find out, you know, if I've missed a bit of detail or, you know, nailed some detail. So please let me know. This is my first crack at Marina, and it turned out pretty awesome. Like, if I do say so myself, I'm using a variety of different boats to plop down, mostly, bit of a variety. And I actually can't remember the publisher of these boats, but I mean, if you are watching, thanks a whole bunch, because we had a couple of boats before, and the person who's released this to the Steam Workshop has released tons, and now we can pretty much build a marina really accurately. And yeah, I mean, I think it turned out really cool. Something that I plopped down earlier was a ferry terminal, and that's basically the main entrance to the marina. And I don't know whether I'm actually going to use it as a ferry terminal. Like, maybe I should, like, maybe it would be cool to see some ferries coming in this way. Well, let me know if you think that'd be a really cool thing. Whether you think ferries should be accessed in this side of Springwood. I know I'm going to be having ferries on the other side of Springwood, where you know, basically around the river part. But this is kind of a bit more on the other side, so I'm not sure whether they'd even be able to make it through the break of the ocean. But this sort of area is kind of intentionally meant to have a bit of a industrial feel to it, but also you know, a bit more up and coming. So there's not really any houses around this area. It's kind of this marina is just plopped in this random location to kind of show that, like, it's starting to expand, and, you know, they're starting to plop down some more leisure areas in this area to service some of the suburbs that are going to be around this area. I'm pulling heaps of ideas from this area just here that is right next to the bridge that you know, probably recognized from before. And I do shortly work on a little bit of desolate, probably like abandoned wasteland, I guess, in between this area and a suburb that I plopped down. I actually do all that stuff off camera because it wasn't particularly entertaining, but, you know, it makes for some pretty good background cinematics. So yes, you can stay tuned for that in the cinematics, and it'll pop up shortly. And I also have a little crack at detailing a suburb in this area that I think turns out pretty good. It's following a very similar idea to the one I plopped down on that hill earlier before, and I've actually got a couple of different building styles that I want to start putting down. A couple of them are a bit more Mediterranean, I guess. They look really cool, and, you know, it's something that I noticed in LA when I visited there a couple of weeks ago, is that you know, buildings have got a bit more of a sort of like a Mexican Spanish sort of look, and there's a few more of them kind of hitting the workshops as of late, so I've been kind of making the most of that. You can see me plopping down something really cool here. So this is kind of what I mean. This is I feel like this building's a bit more you know, got a bit more of a Spanish sort of a look, and unfortunately it says this cheese factory on the front, which is totally cool if I was making a cheese factory, but I actually wanted this to be a bit more of like a restaurant area down this area. So I've got like just sort of searched for sign, and I found like a fishing line. I think it's like a name of a store. I think it might be a UK store. I think we actually might even have one in Australia, but either way, it made for a mighty fine restaurant sign. So I figured it'd kind of be more like a fish and chips restaurant or something like that. Nothing too fancy, but, you know, I think the location and maybe the views are kind of cool. So this whole area is really expanding really nicely. The amount of thought I'm put into these sort of areas is far less than I did in other areas of Springwood, and that's not really because I'm kind of getting lazy. It's actually because it's just flowing a lot nicer. I've really got a clear idea of what I want to do in this area, and it's been really easy to expand it. So that's something that's really exciting, and I actually just want to keep building in this area, and I just want to expand a lot more. But I actually would really like to get back into my other series, my Down Under series, because I've neglected that for probably about a month and a half, mostly due to the update, because they kind of screwed me up a bit. But if you're keen to see that series, please let me know, because I'm really keen to build in there again and really start developing Broken Hill, which is where I'm basically developing. But then I'm also super into Springwood, and I just want to expand this area. And Osara, of course, is my baby as well. And work has been pretty terrible. So I haven't really, I should really be doing work, but I'm really just playing this. So if I kind of disappear for just like a touch of time, that's why. The last section of this episode, I'm building an oil facility. Now I don't really know what's maybe it's like a storage facility, or maybe it's a refinery or something like that. I don't really know exactly what it is, but I'm just pulling some ideas from areas around ports, Los Angeles, and I'm noticing a lot of areas that have a lot of oil drums, and maybe I feel like there might actually be holding areas for oil. So that's what I'm doing here. It's got a bit of a port to it. Maybe not even a port. I think it just kind of access. Maybe not even. I don't know. I don't even know if this is like an access area for boats or for cargo. I just kind of plopped it like this because I really liked that design, and it fitted in really nicely. When you see the cinematics at the end, it's just it's a really cool looking area. I built this way before I built the Osarian episodes this week. I mean, if you haven't seen that already, go and check that out. That's some pretty fine looking oil fields. And so yeah, this is like my first attempt at, well, no, really, not really my first, because I have done oil before in Springwood, but this is my second attempt of doing oil. And I was just kind of going for it. I was basing it off a little bit of that area I showed before, but I did kind of want to go for my own design and have a little bit of functionality. And my first intention was to not detail that much, but then I actually got way too into it and I detailed it tons. So it's like a really cool looking little facility, and it's I think it fits in really nicely with this area and the general theme of this kind of area that I'm building. I posted a couple of days ago, actually no, a couple of days ago as I was speaking to this microphone, but for you guys probably last week, I posted a photo of my limits in Springwood and how close and far away I am. If you want to check that out, it's on my Twitter. So I definitely encourage you to go and check that out if you're kind of interested where I sit in terms of props and my limits. I'm pretty happy with where I'm at, considering I've detailed a ton of stuff, and yeah, I'm ages away from any kind of limits. So if you're kind of interested to know how close I am to maybe even hitting the prop limit or the nodes limits, go and check that out. It's not too bad. I will be hitting it probably in the next 10 episodes, I dare say, but I do kind of plan to maybe like delete some really high detailed areas that don't really need much of a look at anymore. For instance, I actually probably plopped down about 1,000 props in when I built the auditorium. Now that doesn't need that much detail anymore because that episode's been out. So I'll probably go back and just delete a bunch of the props from there and just use old cinematics from way before. That's just an idea I've had for kind of being able to maintain high detailed areas and also not totally ruin Springwood in terms of limits. What I'm doing here is I'm plopping down some pipelines. These are super pretty and I've been wanting to use them for ages. I remember Flux used them in Arrowhead Junction when he was building something very similar to this area. And I really liked them. They looked awesome. So I've been pretty keen to use them. So been holding out. So this episode is basically me holding out on a lot of different props and assets. And now I can actually finally use them, which is totally cool. This area turned out really great. I really love this refinery and it looks so fitting in this area. These pipes I really wanted to be a lot higher up so that they kind of sat on top of these drums as they transport all the oil from container to container. Unfortunately, because they're a building, as I raise them up, so does the ground. So, you know, it was a bit of a pain, but it still looks pretty cool the way it is. We are kind of getting pretty close to the end of the episode, so I'm going to go with my usual spiel and say thanks everybody for tuning in, and if you've liked it, definitely hit the like button and help this channel out by getting more people involved. And if you haven't subscribed already to the channel and you've liked what you've seen, there's plenty more where that came from, so definitely hit the subscribe button and check out more of my material because there's going to be quite a lot. Thanks again for tuning in, and I'll catch you guys in the next episode. See ya.